Hi, everybody. Guess we'll start, right? A warm welcome. My name is Sean Cranberry, and I am one of the founders of Evening Rounds. I've worked in healthcare at a social media capacity for the Canadian Interprofessional Health Collaborative, the Association of Registered Nurses of British Columbia, among other organizations. And I'm still here. Among our founders, we've lost a few of them. Our friends Daniel Hooker and Alyssa Sadler have flown the coop to the States, somehow having amazing new lives, and so we wish them well. I would like to inform everybody that even there's about 2 of us who have internet access, because we're in the room that we're in. We don't actually have a 3G network or a Wi-Fi connection, but if we did, you could tweet and use the hashtag eRounds, which stands obviously for Evening Rounds. We are videotaping this session and we'll be posting it on our website, which is eveningrounds.ca, which you can check out at about 7:15 once you get an internet connection back. And we'll be posting, obviously, the video from tonight, videos from previous sessions that we have finally managed to dig up, and also photos and some discussions as well. Because we're recording this from back there, it's important that for the question and answer period later, we use the microphones that are in front of each of us when and if you have a question. And the way that you do that, I think it might be kind of self-explanatory. You just tap the little button, the microphone will go red, you can speak into it. That way, your voice will appear, although just the back of your head will also appear on the video. We would love to thank our good friends and presenting partners of Evening Rounds, Providence Health Care, who have graciously invited us into one of their new spaces for this inaugural event of 2013. This is a really nice room. Thank you very much. And I think, on that note, I would like to introduce Justin Karasik, Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Providence here. He's going to say a few words, so please welcome Justin.
Hello, everybody. So welcome to St. Paul's Hospital. This is the flagship hospital for Providence Health Care. We need a new hospital with Wi-Fi, obviously, so bear with us on this. This is actually as top-notch, like state-of-the-art room that we have in this building. So this is good for us. It's progress. It's been a pleasure working with the Evening Rounds team and with Signals Design to kind of create this space where we can all get together and collaborate and share our experiences. Tonight's program is of special interest to Providence Health Care in general and to our communications department in particular, because through our research institute, we conduct over 200 clinical studies each year to answer questions about health as well as the medical care that we provide. And our communications department is often asked to help researchers, come up with creative ways to recruit participants. And more often than not, all we can really offer them is a postering strategy, how to poster through our 16 facilities. And so I'm really, happy to be here today to try to learn from the efforts of the BC Generations Project, which has been so successful on some of the tactics that they've used, so that when the various researchers come knocking on our door, we can help them out. So on behalf of Providence Health Care, welcome to tonight's evening, and enjoy.
Thank you, Justin. You look really good in 1080p, by the way. Okay, and so we're going to invite a couple other friends up here. AJ and Kevin from the BC Patient Safety and Quality Council would like to share some information regarding their Quality Forum and Health Talks. And why don't you guys come up and say a few words?
All right, well, thanks again, Sean and Robin and the Evening Rounds team for inviting us to do a quick introduction of our events that are coming up. And we actually look forward to this talk because it could probably help us do recruitment and attendees for our events. There's 3 things. One is Everyday Hero. We're doing a words competition, so Kevin's going to talk about that. We also have our Quality Forum, which is one of our flagship events where we actually bring about 400 to 500 people together in the province of British Columbia to talk about healthcare issues and improvement. And the third is Health Talks. So I'll give it off to Kevin, and he'll talk about those first two.
Cool. Hopefully everyone here has heard of the Quality Forum. If you haven't, it's a big event we're hosting February 27th to March 1st. We're hoping to get around 400 or 500 people. Our registration's on track to reach that. And we have 63 sessions. And embedded within those sessions is kind of a communications social media stream. And we thought you might be interested in it. We have a Twitter 101 session, a crowdsourcing session, an engagement session, and what's the last one? I'm forgetting. A social media guidelines, professional implications, and privacy concerns in healthcare session. So we thought you might be interested in, I know Robin's presenting, in our Twitter 101 session. And it'd be nice to see you all in our stream. Anything I missed?
No, that's
You
good.
can find out
and
more at qualityforum.ca.
So if you want to tweet, unfortunately you can't do it in this room, but if you want to tweet, then come to Robin's session. I think it's on from February 27th to March 1st. And so you can register. It's quite reasonable. I think it's $275. Yeah. Should I do Health Talks?
Yes.
Okay. So Health Talks, it's our evening event on February 27th. It's going to be fun. Last year we tried it. It's a Pecha Kucha style or Pachachka style. Anyone who's been to a Pecha Kucha, just raise your hand. Okay, good. For those that haven't, basically you get 20 slides, 20 seconds each, only photo, and they automatically rotate. So we're getting the speakers to do this style. So we have the CEO of the Northern Health coming, Kathy Ulrich. We have the former Commander-in-Chief from the Canadian Forces, Liz Mathieu. We have Stephen Lewis, who's an infamous person who talks about healthcare policy issues across Canada. And we have I call him infamous, yes. He deserves that title, yeah. And then we have Vincent Lam, Dr. Vincent Lam, who is an emergency physician. And he's written amazing books, and one of them is The Bloodletting and Miraculous Cures, and he's it's actually a TV show in Canada. So those are our 4 speakers so far, and we have spots for 4 more. So if you guys know anyone who would like to speak or who would be great at speaking in this format, we'd encourage you to send in the name. So that's Health Talks. And then lastly, quickly, is Quality Words.
So really quickly. I'm sorry. Okay, really quickly. Today we launched our Everyday Champion Quality Award. Now every year we have a series of awards. We call them the Quality Awards, and they recognize people or initiatives or teams that have improved the quality of care in BC. And this year we launched a new one called the Everyday Champion. And this person will have improved the quality of care that they provide to patients, even though it's not really in their job description to do so. And our judging committee narrowed it down to 4 finalists, and we've opened it up to online voting, and we launched it today. And we have 4 really interesting finalists. They all work in a different profession for a different health authority, and they all improved care in a different way. So it's a really cool cross-section. And you can vote at our website, bcpsqc.ca, and help us spread word and encourage voting from everyone out there. And you can give us feedback on our new website while you're at it.
Yeah, so that's us. And good thing is Alison's actually helping us write our accomplishment report. So it's really nice to hear her speak on another project as well. So thanks for doing this project with us. And thanks again for the opportunity. We're with the BC Patient Safety Quality Council. We're an arm's length entity from the Ministry of Health. And we provide services and support for the healthcare system in BC. So Ajay and Kevin, thanks.
Thank you, guys. All right. So before we start, I'm going to talk a little bit about the team that we have here tonight, the Evening Rounds team. Obviously, Signals, Robin, everyone I'm sure in this room knows who Robin is, and Signals has been a huge supporter of what we're doing. And so thank you very much to yourself and to Signals. The rest of our team here, Julia Vise is here. Janelle Chung is actually tweeting. She's hardwired right into the internet. And we are happy to welcome Daniel Presnell to the team as well. So thanks, Daniel, for being here. Looking forward to working with you. So tonight, I'm going to talk about next month's event at the end, because I think we should get going. So that's what we're going to do. Tonight, as most of you already know, here we are, a colossal call to action. The BC Generations Project is what we're going to be discussing. And I'm not going to read the introduction to it. I'm just going to get right to our speakers. So I'm going to introduce them both. They have awesome bios, which is great. Marilyn Borugian, did I get that right? Ph.D. Rhymes with confusion, apparently. Is the director of the BC Generations Project and a senior scientist for the Cancer Control Research Program of the BC Cancer Research Centre. She is a clinical associate professor at the School of Population and Public Health at the University of BC. Trained in epidemiology, computer systems development, and psychology, Marilyn has published on the associations of diet, body shape, insulin resistance, and socioeconomic status with cancer risk and prognosis, including breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and childhood cancers. Her research focuses on cancer prevention and early detection, in particular with respect to mammographic breast density. In her spare time, Marilyn likes to grow giant garlic, battle neighborhood vermin, and drive with the top down on her red sports car. So, thank you. And of course, Alison Osborne, who's been a huge supporter of this project back when we were HCSMCA, which stands for Healthcare Social Media Canada. And then it's great to have you presenting and talking tonight because you've been with us for almost 2 years now since we first started. So that's awesome. Alison Osborne, working as a communicator in Canada's health and research sectors for almost 2 decades. Alison Osborne is drawn to challenges and rewards of achieving understanding, buy-in, and positive action in these complex, multi-stakeholder environments. A skilled communication strategist, she is also certified as a knowledge translation professional. She's been consulting since 2008 and is co-owner of Monkey Hill Health Communications, a boutique health communications and knowledge translation firm specializing in online communications. Monkey Hill's client lists include health authorities, clinical programs, research organizations, and healthcare nonprofits. Alison recently returned from a truly gluttonous New Year's cruise to Mexico. And she is currently all gung-ho about eating healthier and staying more committed to her martial arts training. So please welcome them both to the stage. Or who's going to come first? Marilyn first. Please welcome Marilyn to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to hear about our project. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this kind of in half. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project itself. Thanks, Sean. Everybody hear that okay now? Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project from the scientist's perspective, from the perspective of someone who was involved right from the beginning, and kind of a combination of science and operations. And then I'll try to get that through fairly quickly because I know the part that you really want to hear about is Alison talking about the communication strategies, what worked and what didn't, and what we learned. So hopefully that will work out fairly well. So on the agenda today is the overview of the project, and I'll move through it fairly quickly, but we're going to cover a lot of detail. So please feel free to break in with questions, and then we'll have some questions afterwards as well. I'll tell you a little bit about the results to date, although with a project like this, those results are mainly in the future actual research results. But these are more things like who did we recruit and a little bit about the group that we've actually got now in hand. When Alison takes over, then she's going to talk about a couple of the challenges that we've encountered in communications. The size of the project and the scope of it have kind of put us in a position of having to communicate with a lot of people in a fairly short period of time. So that has taught us a number of lessons that we're going to tell you a little bit about. We also have a top 3 list, of course, who doesn't? We'd like to have a top 10 list, but really we have a bottom 10 list, top 3 and bottom 10, on the things that we tried and what worked in our context. Please remember as you're listening today, though, that this is a very, this is a unique study, a unique project. And what you can take away from it, there'll probably be a lot of good learnings, but some of them will not necessarily be relevant because of the specifics of the project, which I'm going to tell you about right now. Alison also has a cool topic called the power of Plan B. I don't know what the plan is, but I think she does. I am in charge of Plan C myself. And the future, we'll attempt to look in our crystal ball as well, as best we can. So I'm going to start off with a bit of the who, where, when kind of answers that you need to kind of get a sense of what is it we were doing. So the BC Generations Project, the idea was to recruit from the general population in British Columbia. Eligibility very broad, age 35 to 69, anyone resident in the province. And our timeline, although the project technically started in 2007, we didn't actually receive the funding until 2008. So it has so far been a 5-year operational timeline to complete our accrual. What we asked people to do, so the what of the project, is to fill out a questionnaire or questionnaires, donate a blood and a urine sample, and then optionally provide some basic physical measurements, which I'll describe to you and show you some pictures in a little bit. Unfortunately, things changed as the project moved along, so we had to initiate some additional methods as well, and then work our messaging in order to make it all make sense, and this is where some of the challenges came into play. So the first method was what we call the assessment center, and that was really the optimal, the best quality and the best procedure that we found. The problem was it's also very expensive. So this was modeled on the UK Biobank, which we went to visit in 2008. And the idea was that you invite the person, they come to your center, wherever it is, they do their questionnaire right there. We had touchscreen PCs where they would just enter in their health and lifestyle information. You draw the blood right there. You got the urine right there with the bathroom and the whole thing. We do all the physical measurements, everything. So when the person walks out, they have completed baseline. There's no follow-up. There's no, if they had a question on the questionnaire, they would have asked someone at the time that they were doing it. The very little follow-on work involved. So in that way, it was highly efficient. And we'll talk a bit about this in terms of motivation, but we also found people loved it. There's a huge hunger out there, certainly in the BC population, probably across the country, for information about health, not sickness. Where once someone might have gone to their family doc, people don't really do that so much anymore, just in terms of prevention or health-related information. So people really enjoyed having their, you can have your weight, you can check your own weight, you could go to a Shoppers Drug Mart and put your arm in a blood pressure machine, you could go to the gym and get your body fat done. Most of these things could be done without having to go anywhere. You could do it yourself. But people really like having someone do some measurements and discuss with them. This is, oh, see, your blood pressure is actually in the normal range, and basically give them a bit of a checkpoint. So when we found that the assessment centers were too expensive to complete, we tried to do some negotiation to lower the numbers, but that wasn't successful. So instead, we had to change the protocol so that the budget matched the deliverables. And that's when we initiated something we internally called Phase 2, which means absolutely nothing. But what it means is no more centers, and the people did their questionnaire at home. So we mailed them, we recruited, we mailed them a consent and a questionnaire, and where we could, a requisition to a local community, Life Labs, Valley Med, or BC Bio. And so that was our kind of at-home version of the game. We found that recruitment was harder. It wasn't as motivating, but that's what we had to do for a while. And in the end, we continued to do that even when we reopened assessment centers, because we found that there's a group within our mostly working age population who found it more convenient. So we can talk a bit about that. It's not as attractive generally, but there is a subgroup where they can't maybe make it to an assessment center, their work hours are too restrictive or that type of thing. Lastly, just last September, finally, after a year's delay, we rolled out an online questionnaire and consenting process. And so now we only use paper where someone makes a specific request, and most, I don't know, maybe 99% now are doing an online questionnaire. If we want to get a blood sample from that person, we can't afford it right now from everyone, but where we can, we now email them the Life Labs requisition, and then they go to And people respond to that quite well. We've done a number of pilots on that, and we're seeing maybe in the 80 to 85% success rate on that, which is good because in some cases it's been a year or more since these people were enrolled. And then we asked them for a blood sample by email, and they did it, and we were thrilled. So that's basically what we did. Yeah. You have to hit your microphone button.
Oh, sorry. I'm missing actually what the point of the project was.
I'm sorry?
I'm missing the point. Like, what was the actual goal? You're recruiting people, but what was the goal of the project?
The role of the project?
The goal.
Oh, the
G-O-A-L.
Oh, the why. I'm getting there.
Yeah. Okay.
Hang on.
You can turn off.
Okay.
Okay, let me just finish the where, and I'll come to the why in a minute. Okay, so just to give you a sense of the context within the country. So the BC Generations Project was just BC. We're the BC regional representative in a national project. And we didn't want it to be just a lower mainland study, and a lot are because, well, the logistics are, that's where the people are. And then depending on your funding, it's hard to get at people when they live really far north, especially if you want to measure them and you want to get blood from them. This was done, probably 6 to 9 months ago. So it's a little bit behind, but it gives you a sense that, yes, we've got a lot of lower mainland people, and we've got a lot in the South and Central Island. But we also have a pretty good representation, anywhere from 0.5% to 1% of the population, in a variety of population centers around the province. You can see that we're not well represented way in the far north. Part of that has to do with the lack of labs for picking up the blood samples and just the funds required and the population density at that latitude. But we've got reasonable distribution geographically. How does BC fit within Canada? So the Canadian Partnership for Tomorrow, the national group, is made up of BC, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces. So I don't know if you can read the numbers or not, but those were the original targets. And you may think that seems a bit odd. So for example, Quebec, that's Cartagena, only has 20,000, and they have such a large population base. And yet we had a target of 40,000. I can't explain that. That was behind closed doors. Those targets were set. There was no logic involved. However, that's often how research is done, so that's all cool. The context within or around the world, and now we're getting to the why, just to give you a sense that a number of other countries are also doing, have been and are and continue to do prospective cohorts like ours, and in that same size range or even bigger. So the national target for Canada was 300,000. So you can see that that's actually kind of small, but it's appropriate for our population. The UK Biobank finished at 500,000 about a year and a half ago. And you can see a number of places have recently initiated really large cohorts. And this is just a really tiny sampling. There's quite a few more than this. And so the question before you ever get into any study of any whats and wheres and so forth is the why. Why bother? What's the point? And I had actually an email from a participant a couple of weeks ago, a full professor of physics, and she was quite kind of pissed off. You know, like, this is a really lame study. I joined like 3 years ago and nothing's happened. I don't know what she thinks is going to happen. And what good is it having all those blood samples if they're just going to sit around and you're not going to do anything with them? It's like, okay, well, that's a really valid question, and she got a really long answer from me. But the short answer is, in order to get at prevention and early detection, which is what this prospective study is all about. It's not about treatment, although there may be studies related to treatment. It's about prevention. You need to get ahead of the disease process. What you really, really would like to have, what's gold in terms of research, is a pre-diagnostic blood sample. Okay, when you take a normal case control study design and you recruit cases of whatever disease it is, in my case it might be cancer, in others it might be some other disease, and you match them to healthy controls on whatever parameters, age and sex and whatever else, The problem with the samples that you're taking and even the data that you're collecting from self-report from those individuals, those cases, is that the picture has already been muddied. That person is already well into the disease process by the time they've been diagnosed, unless you're talking about something that's already has a really early detection method, and most don't. So you can look at that blood sample, but you're not going to find those early detection markers because it's already too late. It's not early anymore. And the disease has already started to change the biochemistry, and maybe so is the treatment, if that's the stage that the person is at. So in order to get at biomarkers of early detection or to get at ways to prevent, you've got to start with people when they're healthy. You take the information from them while it's current, not 30 years ago. What did you weigh? How many vegetables did you eat a day? And how much activity? Well, who can answer that? So, but you can answer it as of today, and then we follow you forward, whether it's actively by sending you more questionnaires, and more blood samples, or whether it's passively by linking to the cancer registry and the client registry at the Ministry of Health and the vital statistics and following you that way. That's the way that we can get at the information that we want. The problem with this type of design, and the reason that there haven't been that many over time, is it's very expensive, because despite our intuitive feeling about cancer and most chronic diseases, they're still rare. So if you want to accrue a lot of cases, you've got to start with a really lot of people, which is why these studies are in the hundreds of thousands and not the 10s or 20s or hundreds the way we normally recruit. So the idea of a cohort, whether it's Canadian or whether it's some other country, and our context is different from other countries, so that's why we would want one here and not just use information from other areas. The prospective design is the best way to go at it. Another advantage of doing it this way is, since these people are healthy and what you're asking them about are exposures, you can study any outcome. So as you follow this cohort forwards, some will develop cancer of various types, some will develop heart disease, some will develop diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, some will not develop any of those things. And in the end, when you can have outcomes for all these people, and that, given the age range, is going to be 50 years anyway, because they're going to live, most of them, hopefully, a long time, you can now compare the people within the cohort who've developed a disease with the ones who haven't, and really get at what was going on in that person's blood, what were the interesting things that they reported back before they were ill, before things were starting to become evident. Oh, I should mention that picture. It's a bit of a strange one. That's our lab manager, Trina McDonald. And actually, some of you may know her. She used to be here, worked for Peter Perry. Anyway, she is kind of reaching into a very large liquid nitrogen tank. It's hard to tell the scale from this photo. They're actually 7 foot by 7 foot. And we've got a few of those full to overflowing now with blood samples. Okay, so moving on then from the why to the how. So if you choose to recruit a lot of people from the general population and ask them to fill out questionnaires, do blood samples, and do physical measurements, how do you find them? How do you motivate them to do that? It's a very busy world, and it's a very message-heavy world, as you guys know more than most people. So in our recruitment, the assessment centers, as the date shows, we opened in 2009 at the end of May, and we closed our last assessment center a couple of weeks before Christmas, just recently. The one that's showing in the photograph is the Diamond Center, very close to here. You guys probably know it. It's in the VGH area. And that's where we were lucky enough to get some space. Space was one of our huge challenges, not a communications challenge, but a health challenge. You all are familiar with space wars and how things go in healthcare. So finding a space to run for a short period of time, if you're not going to do a 5-year lease, was extremely challenging. We were very lucky to get this space here in Vancouver. We played around with a number of spaces around the province. We did an experimentation with a mobile, which was a ton of fun. The Center for Hip Health and Mobility has a wonderful $1 million mobile. It's a fantastic mobile clinic. It's fitted actually with a DEXA scanner for their purposes, but a number of other cool things inside. And they run this around the province. So we rented it for a couple of days, and we set it up in the parking lot at the Abbotsford Regional Hospital and Cancer Centre. It was a blast. Unfortunately, it was November. It's probably not great timing to be out in the parking lot. But you'd be surprised how many people love it, and people like to work out in the parking lot too. The nurses were like fighting over who was going to get to work there. Okay, that's interesting. So it was a lot of fun, but again, it was a little bit expensive. That mobile is expensive to run and operate. And again, you need a place to drop it. And we don't have a cancer center everywhere where we can twist arms and get that sort of ability. So watch out, this is a big slide. So on the left, on the left of that little upright line there, represents more or less what I've told you up to this point. The Diamond Healthcare Center ran our first assessment center starting in 2009. By the time the Olympics were on in February 2010, we were shutting down. This was a very sad time for the project. We didn't have the money to run these centers. We couldn't find any additional funding. We had to just shut down. Unfortunately, it was inside the red zone at that time, during that time. So we had to shut down actually before the Olympics ran. And then subsequent to that, we initiated the phase 2 I told you about, which is the next little icon, people doing it at home, and that's been running ever since. And the bottom one, we opened a tiny little clinic in the BC Cancer Research Centre, a little bit of shared space down there. What we didn't want to do was to lose our skills. So we were closing our assessment protocol, closing down our clinical protocol, but we believed that one day we would be able to bring it back. Somewhere money would come, and we would but then all our trained people would be gone, and it would be really hard to come back from that. So we opened up a little clinic, and we ran it then for quite a while. Maybe, I don't know, 20 people a week or 30 people a week, very small flow, but enough to keep people trained and keep our equipment going and made sure that we could come back from the dead if we ever got any money. Now we move to the right-hand side of the slide, and we did get money. We got some money from the wonderful BC Cancer Foundation to do community outreach. And so all those remaining icons and photos on the right-hand side represent the foundation's contribution to our effort. So our first was the Kelowna Clinic, the beginning of 2011. Very challenging. We'd now had our clinical operations shut down for almost a year, except for that tiny little flow through the mini clinic. Maybe one person trained, and we couldn't send her up north. Not that Kelowna's up north, but we couldn't send her out of the Lower Mainland. We needed her. So it was particularly challenging to get that one up and running in January because we hadn't done it away from home yet. And anytime that you're running a protocol and it's like 2 blocks away, it's infinitely easier than if it's a plane ride away. And anything that happens, you're not there to look after things. So it went pretty well. And after that, we started doing them all around the province. And we kind of had to work out how long do you stay and how do you fill the appointment book? Because if you're going to rent a space, and as you can see from these photos, we rented a lot of weird spaces. One was a church, one was a mall, 2 were malls, and cancer centers and so forth. You can only stay for so long. We originally kind of went with 4 weeks. In Victoria, we ran a full 8 weeks because the response was phenomenal. It was the best recruiting we had, I think, anywhere in the province. So those centers were a learning experience for us, and they were also a way to move out of the Lower Mainland and really engage the rest of the province. And we found that people really appreciated that. And centers like Prince George and Kelowna and Kamloops, they kind of feel left out. You know, there's a lot of activity more and more in the north and in the other regions outside the Lower Mainland, but they still kind of feel like everything goes on here and they kind of get left out. So I think that worked to our benefit, and people joined because, hey, they've come to us. So that was actually pretty effective. Our last one was Kamloops, which was just before Christmas. And as you can see, we got about 1,000 or more in each of those 4-week runs. And in Victoria, we got almost 2,300 in a double 8-week run. So what did we do in those centers? I'll never tell. Is anyone here a member of the BC Generations Project? Ah, these girls know. They'll never tell either. Okay, so basically pretty simple stuff. Once we were moving around the province, we did not take our touchscreens with us. We lost our IT guy just before that January 2011 when we had to set up in Kelowna. And we had no IT support, so we didn't take the system where they could key their questionnaires in. We were forced to go to paper at that point. It made it easier, but at the same time, it made more work down the road. So I don't recommend it, but we were in a bind at that moment. Then, so they weren't sitting down and doing their questionnaire. The upside was that cut the visit time and made it easier for some people who found an hour and a half to be too long. Now it's about 45 minutes, much more accessible for some folks. So we did the sitting and standing height, waist and hip measurements, weight, of course, for BMI calculation, the dreaded body fat, which everyone adores, with that wonderful machine that tells you each arm, each leg, and the trunk separately so that you can tell if you're extra fat in your right arm or whatever. Fascinating information. People love it. Blood pressure, standard heart rate. Grip strength, a lot of people enjoyed that one. And bone density are most popular. I'm not quite sure why. I think there's a kind of a feeling, particularly in the women, that they may have an issue, but unfortunately, under the current system, I believe if you don't have a family history, your doc will not recommend a DEXA for you. So this is a way for people. We were not using x-rays, we were not using DEXAs, we were using ultrasound, a way for people to get a sense, am I kind of okay or am I kind of not? So that was actually a big draw. In 2 centers, Vancouver and Prince George, we did spirometry for lung function. We did find a couple of problems with that logistically. One was it took longer. So it added about 10 or 15 minutes to the assessment, which costs us more because you're paying for the nurses, is perhaps a bit more off-putting because people want it to be a little bit shorter. And you're going to laugh at this, but it makes a lot of noise. There's a coaching involved, go, go, go. And depending on where you're renting space, they really don't care for that much. So we had to finally cut that out. So we've got a ton of supplies for spirometry. If anyone wants to buy them, see me afterwards. Okay, so on the at-home version of our game, which has been running for the last 2 years, we did find, as I said, we did it because of money. We didn't do it because it was a good protocol at that time. But in the end, it has served a purpose. It's dealt with the people who felt that they didn't want to have to come into a clinic, that they couldn't make the hours, or that we weren't running a clinic anywhere near them, which obviously we can't run a clinic near everyone in BC. It's a very challenging geography, and the amount of time. So this method still has some measures. We asked them to give us their height, their weight, and their waist and hip measurements. Unfortunately, I'm surprised at how many people don't own a scale. So a lot of people were unable to do that. We did send out tape measures, but so that's not a really good way. And as you probably know, self-report, well, we're all taller and thinner, right? So we have a number of people out there, roughly 12,000 of the 28 or 29 that we now have, that do not have physical measurements or have not given a blood sample. It's not completely an overlapping set, but it nearly is. So those are data points that we hope that we'll be able to fill in next year, contingent on funding being approved. Not new recruitment, but additional data on those that did not yet do a blood sample. And the online questionnaire, nothing fancy there, just the online consent was the main piece to run that through ethics, because it's not, Online consenting, if all you're asking is a few questions, is one thing, but if you're asking for long-term follow-up and linkage, this is fairly new to the ethics boards, not having someone actually explain to you that this is what you're agreeing to. Now, that's a fallible process in itself, but if a person is online, they're not really reading it. They're not. They're going scroll, 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 click, yes. Who reads that stuff? But actually, some people do. Even in the online system, we get comments related to the consent. So I'm fairly satisfied that it's working quite well. And in terms of the audience and that age range, where people might say, well, maybe some of the older folks aren't gonna, not a problem. Urban myth. And if it was ever true, it's no longer true that older people are not technologically savvy. They sure are. So last bit. What have we gotten in terms of results at this time? So, sorry, tables are always so boring, and these are set up by fiscal year, which is even more boring. But in that first 2009 to 2010, that's the Diamond Healthcare Center where we were doing clinical enrollments. So we made just under 5,000 in that first round. Then that next column represents the kind of dark days of trying to recruit through the at-home version, and it also includes the first of the community clinics, Kelowna. The third column was a really good section. That's when we were doing all those clinics around the province, and so we got quite a lot of participants, close to 12,000, and so that's running at almost 1,000 a month, month-over-month accrual, which is exactly what we needed to hit to make our targets. We just needed it to go on a little bit longer. And then the last portion of a year, just representing the most recent time frame, and there we sit at about 28.6. How did they break out? Well, you can see we've got a problem here. So as with most health-related initiatives, the women are more on uptake than the men. We haven't solved this problem. And on the right, the percentages are next to the women's bar, but it really relates to the male percentage. In the older group, we get a bit better proportion of men than we do in the younger, but really, it's pretty much one man for every 2 women. So anyone with suggestions on how to get more guys, we're open to it. Just 2 quick questions. There's just one more slide after this. Their perception of health is very, very good. You've got 2/3 of them saying that they're in excellent or very good health. So these people, and yet they have fairly normal amounts of chronic disease. So I don't know how to interpret that exactly, except that people in BC are health conscious, and I guess they feel that they're in pretty good shape, all things considered. You can see that we've got a largely Caucasian, I know you can't read all that stuff at the top, but largely Caucasian cohort. Our biggest other sections are Asian and South Asian, which is good. And we have probably the best educated cohort ever. I mean, look at this, 80% or more with more than high school. That's pretty rocking. We've got a lot of, and I can tell you from the feedback forums, it's these people with the graduate degrees who are always giving the comments. No, I'm just kidding. They're great. So that's a little bit of a fast recap of 5 years and almost 29,000 BC men and women. I'm sorry, I'd really talked way too long. Alison's given me happy looks, actually. Yay, now I have to talk less. And I'm going to pass it over to her, and she's going to tell you a lot about how we communicated in order to create the motivation and get all those people enrolled. Alison.
Okay, so communications. I just want to preface this by saying that not everything that I'm talking about or presenting on is work that I personally led. There is a lot of recruitment activity that goes on within the project itself that is ongoing, that is led by those folks rather than by any kind of a communication initiative. So basically, when you're trying to recruit up to 40,000 people, you're really very focused on the bottom line. I mean, we want bums in seats, blood in vials, and data on servers. And for a communicator, it's a wonderful challenge because it's not enough just to do sort of the normal things of generating awareness. You actually have to follow through on a call to action, and you get very tangible results from that. And considering how many people that we needed to enroll, we did have limited resources. So we had to be fairly bloody-minded about what we sink our resources into because we don't have a ton of people and we don't have a lot of time or money. So some of the big things that we've learned overall about recruiting is, unfortunately, sometimes success is built on the least sexy communication tools. I'd like to say that, social media was, the lightning rod for us getting all these people, but, in fact, it's pretty much the tried and true things that have worked for us. The other thing is, although we're at the point now that we're wrapping up recruitment, I don't think we're anywhere near to having tapped out the entire market that was the potential for us. There's lots of people out there who are willing to join. The real challenge is being able to reach them and making it easy for them to respond. You'll see in my slides that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on specific numbers and results, basically because it's very difficult to pull all of those things, the results apart when you're just trying to bring people in and doing everything that you can. We know where we saw our best successes. Some of the other stuff is a little muddy. Number 4 is pretty self-explanatory. Oh, where is it? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, number 4. Just as I said, yeah. For example, in the fall, we purchased a list of email prospects, 15,000 of them, and put together the email. Sent it out the same day that the email went out. All the UBC servers went down. And so our online questionnaire went completely dark. We know that people were responding because we saw the traffic on the website, but they couldn't actually fill out a questionnaire. So that kind of sucked. And we tried again the following week, redid another email and said, sorry about that, and could you please do it now? And sent it out again. And for some reason, the graphic, the Join Now graphic link didn't appear in the email. So, sometimes stuff happens. As Marilyn had mentioned, there was a real surprise lesson for us. We were very concerned at the beginning of starting recruitment that asking people to come into an assessment center was a pain in the butt. And we were trying to really minimize the amount of time that they were going to have to take and all of that kind of stuff. And what we found is that it actually is a bit of a carrot for people. They want to know their bone density and their body fat and that kind of thing. And so it's a real lesson in social marketing for us, I think, that people like the feedback and they like being asked. And Marilyn will tell you that one of the most common questions that she gets from recruits is, when are you going to send me another questionnaire? I'd like to fill one out. So, that I think was very surprising to us because we're always worried about bothering people. So we'll talk about messaging. This is our logo, which was designed and as part of a branding piece of work that was done by Signal's design group and Robin Cecil. So in early 2009, I was contracted along with Robin to provide communications planning and support for the first year of recruitment. So Robin did the branding and I did the communication planning. Signals did the visual identity, designed and built the website and all of the collateral materials, and I wrote the content for all of those pieces. So as part of the branding process, Robin took the lead on developing the initial messaging for recruitment. And so we needed to sort of delve into participants' motivation for joining, which we had a good sense of because the project had done some pilot recruitment prior to that. So they had, on feedback forms, found out, what is it that would motivate you to join the project. We were a little concerned about the legitimacy of the project. What is this cohort in BC? And we thought that we really needed to talk about the national goals and the fact that this was a pan-Canadian initiative. We also were very mindful of potential negative perceptions or concerns about something like this. Biobanking, security breaches of health information, those kinds of things that hadn't happened in BC per se, but they were in the media, they were happening in other places, and we were concerned about that. One of the things that's interesting is that this project, before Robin got her hands on it, was known actually as the BC Health Bank. And there was a lot of discussion around, does that seem very impersonal? Does it sound financially motivated when you're using the word bank? What about scandals involving tissue banking? Should we really be using that kind of messaging? So ultimately, we ended up with 4 key messages, which are very straightforward, speak about the legitimacy and scope of the project, explain what it's all about and what we're doing it for. The call to action, we need you and your friends, as well as addressing the primary concern that we saw with people joining the project. And so these key messages were implemented throughout all of the communications materials. One of the largest pieces that we had to get ready prior to the launch was the creation of our website, bcgenerationsproject.ca. And in addition to that, there were brochures and posters and fact sheets and pop-up banners and notepads and all that kind of stuff. And some of that is actually at the front here if you want to have a look at that. So what we've learned about our messages, those initial messages that were developed in 2009 really have stood the test of time. They still work. What we found is that we needed to give a little bit more or less emphasis on them. We actually didn't need to get quite so upset about the whole confidentiality and security issue. And this was sort of borne out in looking at the web analytics. They showed that very few people who visit the site actually look on those pages, which is kind of a drag because we put a lot of work into it, into explaining it. But it does look like if people are interested and they intend on joining, they trust you, for better or for worse. And so that all of the concern that we had about the confidentiality issue was not as big a deal as we had expected. National focus for credibility. Again, people know the BC Cancer Agency. They want to do something within BC, and we found that a really strong message for us was the BC context, which was that we're running the largest cancer prevention study ever conducted in BC. We have always tried to pick up the emotional motivators right from the beginning of what we learned from people who joined the project, why they're doing it. Most people have been touched by cancer in their family or with their friends in some way. Most of the people either have children and grandchildren who they would like to protect from disease, or more generally, helping future generations. And so that kind of messaging, which we started right at the beginning, is very evergreen. It doesn't get stale. And of course, marketing the assessment center option, which it turned out to be a big draw. The challenges with messaging, as Marilyn had said, changes in study protocols. So every time there was a change in the age of eligibility at the very beginning, all of this required revisions to all of our communications materials, which also meant that we had to take all of this content back to the research ethics board to reapprove them. And it also, threatened the consistency of recruitment message. One time we're saying, you guys have to come to an assessment center, sorry. The next time, no, you don't. What do people understand, and what do they know about what they need to do? The changes at the national level. This initially was really very much a cancer-led project. And then as partnerships came on board, and it makes sense, as Marilyn said, a lot of the risk factors for cancer are the same as for other chronic diseases. Other research can draw from that information. But we were being encouraged from the national folks to start including the chronic disease, cardiovascular, diabetes messaging in our materials. And I mean, it was an issue in terms of muddying of the message, because we feel like people are very motivated to join a cancer prevention study, maybe less so something that's just a health study. And then, of course, we touted the 40,000 recruitment number all over the place. So what do you do when you know that you're falling short of those recruitment goals? So that message was softened, shuffled away, abandoned. So the communication methods, we tried a whole bunch of stuff. We've tried all of these things, and quite a few others that probably haven't made it onto this list. The couple things that I will just explain to you, the community outreach one, brochure drops. I think actually that is mostly Marilyn just going to the fire halls and talking to the firefighters and dropping off brochures, but also libraries, community centers, that kind of thing, and actually, going into the banks and asking if you could put your materials in there, that kind of thing. So I mean, that it went as grassroots as that up to huge media events with government officials. Partner communications, we also did quite a bit of work and got quite a bit of help from other organizations who would put articles or messages in their own communication vehicles on our behalf. So, for example, the BC Cancer Foundation magazine, Vim and Vigor, has run a couple of stories about the project. Life Labs put something on their website. The different UBC departments have put things in their newsletters. And also internal health authority communications have put messages encouraging staff to join as well. What we've done here in BC isn't exactly what the other centres have done, and I think it's kind of interesting to see what has worked for us and what has worked for them. Mobile assessment vans, so these are smaller vans than that big honking 18-wheeler jobby that Marilyn was showing you. These are smaller ones that will go in for a couple days into small towns around the province and pick up some participants and run them through the assessment. Ontario has been very focused on incentive-based recruiting. So they have always given out gift cards, and I'll speak about Air Miles for Social Change in just a second as well. Alberta, because they have so many of the corporate headquarters in Calgary especially, have been very focused on corporate partnerships and going through head offices to try and recruit employees, and also to the point of making, negotiating with them to give their employees time off to actually fill out the questionnaires. And Atlantic Canada has been very big on the Project Champions, although I don't know a ton about that. Now, Air Miles for Social Change is quite an interesting one that the other centres have had a lot of success with. And what it is, it's the nonprofit arm of Air Miles, where health promotion initiatives can access Air Miles resources and, most importantly, their mailing lists, their email lists, to offer an Air Miles-based reward for completing the questionnaire. So you send something out to 200,000 people, because, their email lists are massive, and say, if you'll get 50 reward miles if you fill out this questionnaire and join the project. So, and the great thing about this is that you only pay for the returned questionnaires. So you're not paying for it to be pushed out there, you're only paying for what gets returned to you. So it is a super economical way, ultimately, of recruiting people, because you're only paying for the successful ones. It's been very successful with the other centres, especially Ontario. They have just run with it. And actually, we ran a pilot here, and it was very, very successful for us. But one of the interesting things about what happened is, I guess I would say that the health environments are so different between provinces, and ultimately we didn't get the green light to do a full rollout because of concerns about incentivizing participation. So that one was dead for us, whereas other provinces were able to do that. No.
Excuse me, do you have an assessment of how the recruitment methods worked for all these other provinces?
We hear anecdotally, and I don't know that we've got any hard stats on that. We get together every couple months and chat on the phone about it, and we just hear that they're doing it. We have kind of different... The centres are all quite different from one another. For example, Alberta has got, and Ontario, they've got quite a bit of matching funding, so they've got more resources. For us, and I think Alberta is starting to get some traction on their corporate stuff. For us, we did a little bit of that, and we found, what we discovered was we'd need to really work at it and put a lot of effort into it for it to work for us, so that's why we abandoned it. So doing corporate partnerships and that kind of thing. So, we know what their numbers are, but it's a little bit of a black box, isn't it?
It's hard to attribute to any one factor because we were doing too many at one time.
Yeah. So in our experience, we did have some non-starters that we tried and just didn't work for us. One of them, which I think happened before I even came on the project, was that the project did a trial of random digit dialing, which I think was pretty abysmal. And they just ended up talking to people who were really desperate to talk on the phone. So that didn't work so well. The other thing, actually the other two things, and I mentioned the corporate outreach piece, but also paid advertising. I think those things are probably very effective, but you need to do them very consistently over a long period of time. And we simply didn't have the resources to get into that in any serious way. The other one is, we get a lot of advice about, you should try this to get people. Everybody figures that it's super easy and would be super effective to pick up the phone And Kevin Smith, you see this picture is for you? Yeah. Call up Trevor Linden, and he's sure to come and endorse it, and everything will be great. And I mean, the reality is that sort of these celebrity endorsements are really difficult. They take a lot of negotiation. A lot of these people are already allied with other causes, and it doesn't make sense for them, for their brand, for the brand of the cause they support, to muddy their message in supporting somebody else publicly. It just doesn't make sense. And so, this was another thing that we really didn't pursue in any great way, although I do have a story about one that I'll tell in a couple minutes. Oh, also with celebrity endorsements, you need to put them to good use. So you need to have the resources to do proper advertising, to do all of those things that would support their message. The winners, what are the things that worked best for us? Social networks, and this is basically asking people to tell their friends and family. And that worked really very well. Media relations, we had a lot of success. Easy for me to say. I'm going to have a little drink here for a sec.
What kind of relations? We don't have bleeping technology.
Oh, rats. We had success with media relations. And womp womp. Direct mail, #1 for us. It worked really, really well. And it's not that exciting, but there it is. So, direct mail. We sent out more than 800,000 invitation letters, and what we did that was, it was random mail out to households. And we were able to slice and dice by community and that kind of thing. So we were quite strategic in where we sent them out. And if we were going into a town that had where we were setting up an assessment center, that's where we would send the mail as well. And so the invitation either said to attend an assessment center or to join from home. And the letter drops again were scheduled so that operationally we could maintain steady intake of new participants. We had the website supporting this for providing online information and for people to actually sign up, as well as a call center for people who want to phone in and book appointments or request a study package. So the things that we learned about direct mail is that people really are more motivated. I mean, you can do media relations, and I'll talk about that, but that's sort of like a general call to action. But people respond much more to something in their hands, and where they're contacted directly and asked to join. One of the funny things about it is their response can be delayed for months or even years. I guess because they think it's important, they get it and they go, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. I need to do this," and then they put it in a pile somewhere, and we would get responses and calls back from people seriously months or years afterwards saying, "I got this, I feel really bad, can I still join?" One of the challenges we found, or one of the interesting things that we found, is that when we mailed into communities where we were doing a community assessment center, everybody signed up for the assessment center. Sorry. and the at-home registrations really dropped off. So we weren't really able to get a huge bang for all of them. How much? I'm getting there, Robin. Okay.
People want to ask questions.
Okay, yeah. So media relations. 3 components. We did a major media campaign for the launch of the project. We've also done media relations for each of the 8 communities that we've been in with the assessment centers. And actually this month we're planning a final recruitment push through the media. So with, excuse me, October 2009, with our initial media launch, super successful, way bigger response than what we had expected, and we really had to scramble to respond to all of the media inquiries that we got. What we ended up with was coverage on all the major local TV news programs, all the way across radio, the major dailies. We got some newspaper in Winnipeg, I don't know. And interestingly, TV Week, and it came out a little bit after we had done our big media push. Rhonda Lowe, who is on one of the TV stations, CTV, she, I guess, has a syndicated or something column that goes into TV Week as well, and that just went in. We didn't know it was going in. We got great response from people who were reading the TV guide. I know. Yeah, I know, crazy. I mean, it could have to do with the demographic that we're trying to reach. I don't know. So results from that media launch, 1,200 new participants directly attributable to that outreach, and it also bumped up the numbers for our direct mail campaigns. So that was very good, and we got really, we were concerned about potential questions again about confidentiality, security issues. None of that happened. It was across the board very, very positive. Lessons learned. Media relations is hard. And it's not hard, I would say, so much with, we've got a good story to tell, and it's actually an easy one to tell. But the BC Generations Project exists in the context of an agency, a health authority, the health ministry. And so a lot of activities that we want to do, and we want to do all the time, they require a certain level of work and approvals and planning that, if you're independent, just, you don't need to do. And so, for example, news releases, they trigger, if you want to do a news release, it triggers a protocol that goes all the way up to the top. So, we learned a lot of things around this, and we did a lot of different types of media outreaches, especially in the communities. Everything from just calling up a couple of reporters in a town and arranging interviews, all the way to hosting a media conference with the health minister. So what we've learned is the bigger event isn't necessarily better in terms of who comes out to it and what happens with your recruitment. And often the less formal approaches will work better for you if everyone is on board. And what I mean by that, you have to work with the communications departments in your agency. And we hit upon the fact that if we basically sent emails to reporters giving them all the same information that would have been in a news release, but we didn't make it a news release, we could do things a lot more efficiently than if we had to go through the really official channels. And they were cool with that. So, I mean, it worked out quite well for us. You also need to understand that there are different approaches and different objectives among the organizational partners, when you're working with the health authority. We see this very much as a social marketing initiative where the more communication and the more we can get out there, the better for our project. And so our approach really has more in common with the kind of work that they do in the foundations, like the BC Cancer Foundation, where it's very proactive, it's marketing based. The health authority tends to be more reactive and issues management based, and so they are always concerned about risk management. And so sometimes those two objectives kind of butt up against each other, and you need to negotiate that. And we have to remember that we work within the context of a health authority, and that's the bottom line. Start early, start your planning early, and always have a plan B, C, D. So I've got one little story. We had one assessment center opening where we'd issued invitations to all the local MLAs, the mayors, all that kind of stuff, and they had all politely declined. But we did manage to confirm the attendance of a very well-known Olympic athlete who said that he would come and be a participant and act as a spokesperson for us. So that was awesome. So we sent out the media advisory saying, hey, this guy's going to be here. And the afternoon before our event, he contacted us and said that all of his family, his wife and his 2 young daughters, were sick as dogs with uncontrollable vomiting or something, and he was going to be able to make it. That same day, we got a message from a member of cabinet or cabinet minister that they were going to attend as well, and we hadn't expected that. So we needed to change the program, we needed to change the news release on the fly, and I'll go through all that whole approval system overnight to make the event actually work for us. And we did it, and the event was great. The cabinet minister was wonderful, everything worked out well, but sometimes, you know, the best laid plans. Last thing. Social networks. And by this, I don't mean social media necessarily. It's really about people knowing other people. A project of this size really needs that tell-a-friend component. I mean, you just exponentially increase your recruitment base if you take that approach. And one of the things that worked really well for us was asking women to bring their husbands. When they called to book an appointment. Do you have a husband? Does he want to come? That worked very, very well. We had a Facebook page. We've got 1,500 fans, which I think is not bad. And so there has been some sharing. We have done some asking of them to share links with their friends. But I think there are limitations to that because you can't ask people to do over and over and over again to do exactly the same thing, which is to help us recruit. I don't know that that's interesting to people. You know, we know that there are people out there who are willing to help us. Most people indicated that they would encourage their friends and family to join. Others were a little more reticent. They said, show me first. Let me trust you first, basically. So last November and December, we did an email campaign. We basically went back to our existing cohort of people that we had already recruited, and we sent them all emails and said, hey, recruitment's nearing its end. We sure would appreciate your help in helping us spread the word again and encouraging your friends, family, colleagues to join. And here's some short text about the project. Please share. And again, attribution is a little bit difficult, but you can see on this graph that every time we sent out an email like that, we got spikes on the website. And what we think is it resulted in about 2,000 more participants joining just because of that. It was simple and it was free and it was basically capitalizing on the people we already had. So lessons for this, it's about people, not the platforms that you use. You have to understand that people are putting themselves on the line by recommending your study to their friends and colleagues, so you have to be very trustworthy and appreciate that. There are people who will do that very easily, very spontaneously, are happy to do that, but some people need to wait and see a little bit before they'll become evangelists for your cause. So those are my top 3, and now I'm going to invite Marilyn back up to talk about what's next for the project.
I know. We'll get off that ugly slide. Well, we don't really know, but we do know that the message is changing. So now we have not participants anymore. We want to rebrand them as members. So now you're members of the BC Generations Project. Our channels will change because now we don't have to go looking for people. We know where they are. So we can direct to them newsletters, email updates. There's actually a newsletter coming in the next couple of weeks. We hope, and follow-up questionnaires, of course. What we hope to do is to be able to create a channel where we can stream to them information about research and about health-related topics, because we know something about these people now. So we know their blood pressure, and we know their bone density, and we know whether they were smokers or not smokers, and we know what they've told us. I don't know if it's true, but we know what they've told us. So we can use that to customize or personalize information back to them. So we can give them information about the study, of course, that's great, but we can also give them additional information on topics we think that they'll be interested in based on what they've told us. So that's, as we move forward, it's important that we keep track of these folks, that we keep them engaged. We still have value, even if we lose them. Now, we've already lost some people. Some people have already moved, some people have already become lost to follow-up. That happens. It's bound to happen. But we have the baseline information, we have the consent to link, and we have the consent to recontact. So even if we've lost them, we still have great value. But there's even more value if we don't lose them, and we can ask them more questions. So that's why communications is really important in the next phase as well. Just to acknowledge a small subset of the many, many, many people who have been involved. And I know Alison mentioned this right at the beginning, but this is a huge team effort. It's not a huge team, but it's a huge effort by a team, and it definitely, all of these people and many more deserve a great deal of thanks, including Rick Gallagher, who was the principal investigator whose vision started this. He's the one who brought together all of the regions for the first conversation, and John Spinelli, the current principal investigator who's leading the charge now. And of course, we want you to go out and recruit somebody tonight. So take a brochure, head outside. No, I'm just kidding. We are still open, obviously, until March 31st. So anybody who's in the eligible age range and is interested, I invite you to check out the brochure, maybe go to the website. And if you have some parents, aunts and uncles, friends and colleagues that you think might be interested, we're happy to provide you with posters, brochures, and other materials. Thanks very much for your attention.